Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending some books with some dark, creepy forests in them. So it is September and we just started fall, and whenever I think of fall reads, I think of kind of dark, creepy forests, and it's one of my favorite settings. So I thought I would share some recommendations with you guys. But before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon. The first book is going to be Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is an adult standalone, and it has been coined as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It follows a girl named Agnieszka, and she lives in this small village, and this village is protected by this wizard known as the dragon. And every 10 years, the dragon swoops into the village and picks up a girl to take back to his tower. And it's always like the most beautiful and talented girl. So Agnieszka thinks that her best friend is going to be chosen, but the dragon actually chooses her. So the dragon is protecting this village from this dark forest that is surrounding it, and the forest has been encroaching like closer and closer to the village and has been rumored to be stealing people away. And we actually do learn about this forest. I would say like the last quarter of the book really digs into the history of the forest and the lore, but it is a dark, creepy, evil, corroded, corrupted type forest. And we learn that it was once or is ruled by this wood queen, and she has to feed the trees humans in order for them to survive. But we do learn the backstory of the Wood Queen and her people and kind of sympathize with it. So there's a lot that goes into the story. There's action, there's romance, there's magic, and then we have the overarching nemesis, which is this forest. And then we have The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I cannot include a list about dark forests without talking about The Hobbit and Mirkwood. So this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie and the book, where the dwarves and Bilbo have to go into Mirkwood, and they start seeing all of these strange lights and thinking it's like the elves and that they're being tricked, and then they get disoriented and can't find their way, and Mirkwood is a very sentient, very alive type forest. And then we have the battle with the giant spiders, which was epic in the movie and the book. And then that's the scene where Sting, Bilbo's dagger, gets its name. There are so many elements that go into Mirkwood, and it's just the perfect dark creepy forest. We have The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This is a YA fantasy, and it is a standalone, but there has been companion novels that she has written, and I also think a book of short stories, but this is all I've read. And this book, I will say that the first half of it does not have any type of like dark forests, and the book really didn't pick up until the second half, in my opinion. That's kind of what saved this story. But we follow a girl named Alice, and Alice's grandmother is famous for having penned the Tales of the Hinterland, which is like this famous book of fairy tales that take place in the Hazelwood. And Alice always knew that there was something strange about her, and there are like these cult-like people that follow her grandmother's stories and are like convinced that the Hazelwood is real. So Alice ends up teaming up with one of these fans to enter the Hazelwood. And there Alice learns way more about who she is and her past, and why her grandmother's Tales of the Hinterland are so important. And I feel like this book has a very Alice in Wonderland feel. For some reason, when I was reading about Alice's, maybe it's because her name is Alice, but as I was reading about Alice's experiences in the Hazelwood, I just kept thinking Alice in Wonderland. I just love the second half of this book so much because Alice's experience in the forest was fantastical. It was weird, it was bizarre, it was creepy, and just is the perfect book to read if you're looking for that trope. Next, we have The Raven Boys, which is a young adult quartet, and it is written by Maggie Stiefvater. And in this series, we have a dark forest that is called Cabeswater. Cabeswater exists on the ley line of Henrietta, Virginia, which is where the story takes place. And in this series, Cabeswater actually is a character itself almost. It is a very ancient old forest, and there are magical elements within it. For example, time is warped. Sometimes people can see like almost futuristic or prophetic visions within this forest. It just has a lot of fantasy to it, and some of the characters in the book can actually manipulate things in this forest and create things in this forest, and a couple of the characters just have like this deep connection to this fantastical living forest. And it's just a really cool, wild, bizarre experience, because sometimes the forest will act on its own accord and do things, especially in the fourth book. So Maggie Stiefvater definitely created a character out of this cave's water that is relevant throughout all 4 books, and it was just interesting reading about the characters who were able to tap into the magic of this forest and see what they could do. Next, we have Small Favors by Aaron A. Craig. This is a YA standalone fantasy horror, and I do have a full review for this. I'll link up into the cards if you're interested in checking it out. But in this book, we follow a girl named Ellery, and Ellery lives in this village that is secluded from the rest of the world by these mountains, and they were settled by these original settlers. And the settlers had talked about how they had experienced these monsters in the forest that surrounds their village, but so much time has passed that people don't really believe that they were actually monsters anymore. But still, around the village, they have they're almost like these big bonfire type structures that they light in order to keep away the evil of the forest. And they also hang these chimes in the branches of the trees closest to the village so that they'll be alerted if something tries to come in. But in the beginning of the book, we actually see that there have been some attacks with people trying to go on supply runs out into the forest, and there's speculation that these monsters might have come back. And there's also this evil that is permeating the town and infecting the people and making them just act oddly and weirdly and violently. So Ellery has to kind of go on a journey to figure out exactly what's going on. Not only do we have the village that's trying to protect itself, but Ellery does go into this forest, and there's just some kind of grisly descriptions of some attacks that went on there. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie The Village by M. Night Shyamalan, but that's kind of what this book reminds me of. And lastly, we have The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. This is a book that I'm currently reading. I'm on chapter 7, page 174. And in this book, we're following a girl named Lexi, and Lexi lives in this small village called Near. And Near doesn't get any visitors. And one day, she thinks she sees a visitor outside her window in the middle of the night and kind of looks like a phantom, but then other people start saying that they've seen a visitor. And as soon as this visitor comes, little children start going missing, so they start to blame this newcomer, which no one can find. And Lexi knows that there are 2 witches who live kind of in the forest on the outskirts of Near. So she goes to them, figuring they might know about this newcomer and what's going on with him. And there's also this fabled Near Witch. And this Near Witch is like supposed to be evil and feared, and no one really knows if she still exists or ever exists. So Lexi starts to think that maybe the Near Witch is having something to do with these children disappearing. I will say that this probably has the least amount of forest in it. Yes, the witches live in the forest, but this setting is described mostly as moors, and Lexi talks about the setting and just how the moors look. So it's not as like densely packed forest as the other books, but there is still a creepy forest element to it. Okay, you guys, that is it for my Dark Forest book recommendations. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought them, or if you have any good recommendations for books with dark, creepy forests, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!